The Miami sun beat down on the tarmac as Kendra Monroe, 35-year-old tech mogul and self-made billionaire, stepped out of her armored black SUV. Clad in a crisp white blazer and designer sunglasses, she was the very image of wealth, power, and elegance. This wasn't her first trip, nor her first time boarding her private jet. But today, something in the air felt ... off. Her assistant, Layla, walked briskly behind her, holding a tablet and murmuring updates about the meeting in Chicago. Kendra's stride was smooth, practiced. Every heel click on the concrete echoed confidence. Her jet, the Phoenix one, gleamed under the sunlight, the custom gold-trimmed logo a symbol of her empire. As they neared the aircraft stairs, a group of crew members stood at attention, whispering among themselves. Leading them was a tall, silver-haired man with narrowed eyes, Captain Roy Mitchell. The moment his eyes met Kendra's, his posture stiffened. She was used to that look, suspicion wrapped in a smile. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said with artificial courtesy. "Passengers aren't allowed this close to the aircraft. The owner hasn't authorized boarding yet." Kendra raised an eyebrow. "I am the owner," she replied coolly. "Kendra Monroe?" He chuckled, clearly not believing her. "You'll need to step back. We don't want any misunderstandings." Layla's jaw dropped. Kendra didn't flinch. She had fought too hard to be questioned on her own property. "I suggest you verify your facts before embarrassing yourself further," she said, her voice razor-sharp. Captain Roy's smirk faltered, but he stood firm. Kendra turned to Layla. "Call legal, now." As Layla moved quickly, Kendra stood motionless, eyes locked on the crew. She had faced bias before, but this time she had the power to respond, and she would. Kendra sat silently in the private terminal lounge, surrounded by sleek leather chairs and glass walls that offered a perfect view of her own jet. Layla paced nearby, phone pressed to her ear, her face tense. The legal team had been looped in immediately, and they were furious. Kendra's company owned Phoenix One outright, no partners, no leasing. And yet, she was being treated like an intruder. Across the glass, the crew stood huddled, stealing glances in her direction. Kendra watched them with unwavering calm. Her expression gave nothing away, but her silence was loud. Captain Roy leaned casually against the jet stairs, still unaware of how badly he had miscalculated. "I've confirmed with operations," Layla said, finally ending her call. "They're forwarding ownership documentation and will contact the airline's legal office directly." "Good," Kendra replied, her voice smooth but icy. "Let's make sure everyone sees what happens when disrespect is met with authority." The lounge attendant, who had initially greeted Kendra with politeness, now looked visibly uncomfortable. Word had begun to spread. A billionaire, the Kendra Monroe, was being denied access to her own plane. An hour passed. Captain Roy finally entered the lounge with a tight-lipped smile. "Well, there's still some confusion," he said, "but we're working on clarifying the issue." Kendra stood slowly. "There's no confusion," she said, "only arrogance." She reached into her bag, pulling out a leather folder. Inside were certified papers, ownership, flight permits, crew contracts, everything. Roy's face turned pale as she handed them over without a word. "This lounge," she said, "isn't your shield, and this uniform won't protect you from accountability." He said nothing. Kendra turned to Layla. "Get the cameras ready. Now the world would see." Within 20 minutes, Layla had arranged for a professional videographer from a local PR firm to arrive at the lounge. Kendra didn't just want to win, she wanted transparency. She knew what stories like this could do if told right, and she knew how to control a narrative. The videographer captured everything. Kendra calmly reviewing the ownership documents, Layla reading aloud the legal team's cease and desist letter, and the now uncomfortable crew standing awkwardly outside the glass walls. Kendra's image, calm, poised, powerful, was no accident. Every frame was deliberate. Layla whispered, "Add hashtags and jet justice," Kendra said, "and know her name." The video was edited in real time, a side-by-side display of Kendra's credentials and the captain's denial, set against the luxury of her jet. It wasn't about ego, it was about principle, about how even power and billions didn't insulate black women from doubt. By the time Kendra's video was uploaded to her company's social media accounts, the clip was already gaining traction. Within an hour, it had been reposted by influencers, journalists, and activist accounts. The comments poured in. Disbelief, outrage, solidarity. Captain Roy and his crew hadn't yet realized what was happening. But inside the terminal, phones were lighting up. A junior staffer approached Kendra nervously. "Miss Monroe," CNN just called. She nodded. "Tell them I'll speak when I'm ready." By the end of the day, the video had hit 2 million views. Hashtags trended worldwide. The footage of Kendra standing beside her jet, arms folded, papers in hand, became a viral symbol of ownership, of dignity, of resistance. What began as a simple denial had turned into a global statement, and Kendra wasn't done. When Captain Roy was summoned back to the lounge the next morning, his demeanor had changed. Gone was the smugness. In its place stood a man tense with unease. The media was now circling, and his name was all over social platforms. Calls from the airline's upper management had started pouring in. Kendra stood waiting. This time, she wasn't alone. A legal representative, 2 media consultants, and her publicist flanked her. Her calm was even more unsettling than her anger. "Captain Roy," she began, "do you know what you did wrong yesterday?" He shifted uncomfortably. "There was protocol. I thought." "You didn't think," she interrupted. "You assumed. You saw a black woman in a position you didn't believe she could own. You judged, then acted." He opened his mouth to respond, but she raised a hand. "You will not speak. You will listen." Her voice remained measured, every word clear. This wasn't just about an incident on a tarmac. This was about systemic bias wearing a uniform, and now the entire world knows it. She turned to her legal rep, who handed Roy a formal termination letter. "You are hereby relieved of all duties effective immediately. Security will escort you and your crew off my property." Roy looked stunned. "Your property?" "Yes," Kendra said. "I bought the entire hangar last night." Gasps followed from every corner of the lounge. "I'm not just removing a crew, I'm reclaiming a space." As the crew gathered their belongings under the watch of security, cameras rolled. Every step was documented. Kendra stood tall, unflinching. "I built my empire from scratch," she said, loud enough for the room. "No one gets to shrink me on ground I paid for." The room was silent. Power had spoken. The next morning, headlines dominated the news cycle. "Billionaire black woman fired crew after jet discrimination. Now she owns the hangar." Kendra Monroe's viral video sparks global conversation on racism in aviation. The airline scrambled for damage control. Their PR department released a hastily written apology. "We regret the misunderstanding." But the public wasn't buying it. The story had legs, and it was sprinting. Inside Kendra's downtown office, her team sat around a long glass table. Screens displayed live analytics, 12 million views and counting, interviews requested by nearly every major news outlet. Her name trended globally, but so did the movement it sparked. "Open Skies Initiative," Kendra said, pointing to the name written on the whiteboard. "We're not just exposing injustice, we're building change." Her COO nodded. "We can start with scholarships, training programs, industry audits, and diversify the leadership pipeline," Kendra added. This wasn't just a media win, it's a mission. Meanwhile, former crew members were being doxxed and debated online, but Kendra refused to endorse mob culture. Instead, she redirected energy toward reform. Her inbox overflowed with letters from young black pilots, flight attendants, and passengers, all thanking her for speaking up, for taking a stand not just for herself, but for every person made to feel like they didn't belong. The next day, she received a private message from a major airline CEO. "We'd like to collaborate. Can we talk?" Kendra smiled. They finally understood she wasn't just a passenger. She was in the cockpit now, and she had no intention of landing anytime soon. Kendra stood at the hangar she now owned, overseeing renovations that would transform it into a new hub, one dedicated to inclusion, innovation, and access. Her team worked fast, replacing signage, redesigning uniforms, and building what she now called the Monroe Aviation Terminal. It wasn't just a flex, it was a statement. "Make sure the new lounge doesn't look like a country club," she told the designers. "Make it look like the future." The once cold, exclusive terminal was being reshaped into something warm and visionary. A wall was being installed at the entrance, featuring a digital mural of black aviators, engineers, and pioneers. Beside it would be her own viral photo, Kendra standing with the documents that proved her ownership, her jet gleaming behind her. Layla approached with updates. "The Open Skies website is live. Scholarship applications are pouring in. We've also received support from aviation unions, former pilots, even NASA." Kendra's lips curved slightly. "Good. Make sure every applicant feels seen." She wasn't interested in symbolism without action. Every step had to move people forward. Meanwhile, media continued to cover her every move. Not just for the spectacle, but for the shift in culture she represented. People were hungry for more than just drama. They were hungry for progress. Later that evening, Kendra boarded Phoenix 1 again, this time with a hand-picked, diverse, and highly trained crew. Every member wore a badge that read, "Equal skies for all." She walked the aisle with pride. Her presence wasn't questioned, it was celebrated. The old crew was a memory, a necessary casualty of a larger mission. The jet soared into the sky. Kendra looked out the window, the city lights below. She hadn't just won, she had changed the altitude for everyone after her. With visibility came backlash. Not everyone celebrated Kendra's success. Her inbox now included hate mail, some subtle, others venomous. News commentators debated her actions. Was she too harsh? Was it reverse discrimination? Panels of talking heads tried to dissect her tone, her posture, her authority. But Kendra didn't flinch. "This is what happens when a black woman takes control," she told her team. "They start calling it aggression." She wasn't new to resistance. She had been doubted in boardrooms, underfunded by VCs, and mocked in tech expos. But she had never stopped. And she wouldn't now. Her legal team began investigating the airline's past, discovering other complaints buried under layers of red tape. Stories from other passengers, especially women of color, started surfacing. Kendra decided to highlight those stories on her platform. Each voice added fuel to the fire. "What they tried to do to me," she said in a live stream, "they've done to others who couldn't speak. But I can." Support surged. Celebrities reposted her video. Journalists asked to shadow her. A best-selling author even pitched a book collaboration. But Kendra stayed focused. Behind the scenes, she was working on a deal to launch her own charter airline, a luxurious but inclusive line that would prioritize safety, representation, and respect. A team of experts was already on the project. The backlash couldn't match the momentum. In fact, it only made her platform stronger. One night, as she reviewed pilot resumes with Layla, she paused and said, "You realize this isn't just about flying planes?" Layla nodded. "It's about shifting power." Kendra looked out the glass window of her new terminal. "No," she whispered, "it's about building new runways, where nobody gets left behind." A week later, the airline CEO reached out personally. He requested a private meeting to offer a formal apology and discuss a public reconciliation. Kendra agreed, but on her terms. She chose the location, her new terminal, in the very lounge she had once been denied entry to. The CEO arrived flanked by lawyers and PR agents. He extended a hand. "Ms. Monroe, I'd like to apologize, truly, for the experience you endured." Kendra shook his hand but remained expressionless. "You mean the experience your staff created?" He paused, then continued. "We'd like to invite you to collaborate on a new inclusivity council, maybe even consider a board position." Kendra arched an eyebrow. "So I fix what you broke, and you get credit?" He cleared his throat, uncomfortable. "I'm not here to make your company look better," she said. "I'm here to make the industry better." She slid a folder across the table. Inside, a list of demands, policy changes, hiring quotas, and compensation for affected passengers over the last 10 years. The CEO flipped through it, stunned. "This is aggressive." "No," Kendra replied. "This is accountability." He didn't respond. "Let me save you the trouble," she said. "You're not the hero of this story. I am." She stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Her media team was waiting. Before the CEO even reached the parking lot, her next video was live. "I met with the airline CEO. Here's what I told him." Millions watched. The message was clear. She wasn't here for their scripted apologies. She was rewriting the entire script. The launch of Kendra's new aviation company, Equijet, came just 60 days after the incident. The inaugural flight was set to depart from the newly rebranded Monroe Aviation Terminal. The guest list was diverse: activists, investors, single moms, scholarship winners, retired pilots who never got their due. The crew wore navy and gold uniforms with equity in the air stitched into their sleeves. The vibe was not corporate, it was revolutionary. Kendra stood at the front of the aircraft, mic in hand. "Today isn't just a launch," she said. "It's a liftoff. For everyone who was ever told, 'You don't belong here,' this jet belongs to you." Applause erupted. The flight was smooth. Meals were curated by minority-owned caterers. In-flight entertainment featured documentaries on civil rights, innovation, and perseverance. Every passenger received a custom travel kit with a personal letter from Kendra. At cruising altitude, she looked around the cabin. Laughter, comfort, joy, it was exactly what she had envisioned. She made her way to the cockpit and nodded to the pilot, a black woman in her 40s who had spent 15 years fighting for cockpit inclusion. "This is your seat now," Kendra whispered. "Permanently." They smiled. The flight landed to cheers and a press frenzy. Reporters lined the runway. But this time, Kendra didn't need to make a speech. The moment spoke for itself. A black woman wasn't denied a seat, she created a fleet. Months later, Kendra Monroe's name had become synonymous with more than just tech or aviation. She had become a symbol. Schools taught her story. Documentaries followed her rise. Equijet had expanded to 3 cities, with 2 more terminals under construction. Open Skies had awarded 200 scholarships. Formerly denied passengers had new jobs, new chances, new lives. And Kendra? She stayed grounded, despite flying higher than ever. On a quiet Sunday, she walked to the original tarmac where everything began, the spot where Captain Roy had once stood. She paused, reflecting, not with anger, but clarity. Layla joined her, holding a letter. "Another thank you," she said, "from a girl in Atlanta who wants to be a pilot. Said she never thought it was possible until she saw you." Kendra read it slowly. Her eyes welled with quiet pride. She spoke softly. "You know, if that crew had let me board that day, none of this would exist." Layla nodded. "Funny how their gatekeeping became your launch pad." They laughed. From a denied boarding came a global awakening. From humiliation came legacy. And from prejudice came purpose. Kendra turned to the wind, her voice steady. "We didn't just take flight," she said. "We changed the sky."